How are we doing, Jets fans? I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio, jetnation.com. Be sure to log in to jetnation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Joined, as usual, by Dylan Terman and Chris Schubert. Plenty going on in Jets land, as you know. And really, guys, a lot going on. But good news for those of us who have been screaming for this team to make changes. And I would like the Twitter folks to take note. I've had a lot of people in recent weeks come at me for suggesting changes, like getting angry, like, dude, you're not a coach, you're not the GM, they know what's best. And I'm like, look, sometimes they get it wrong. And it looks like they're finally catching on. We see Michael Carter let go, very popular guy in the locker room. I don't think there's a Jets fan that doesn't like Michael Carter, the person, but he's been really bad this year. Wasn't so great last year. Some more moves have to be coming. It certainly sounds like that's the case. As far as you guys are concerned, whether you want to predict which moves you think are coming or talk about which moves you would make if you were in charge, king for a day, you can make a few changes to this offense. You can't blow the whole thing up because that ain't happening as much as you might like to. But what are you doing? What do you think is going to happen, or what would you like to see happen? Go ahead and let's kick it off, Dylan.
Yeah, I think I tweeted it out about 2 hours ago that there's just three additional things I would do. And obviously one is a direct fallout of Michael Carter being released. I'm going to go in order of how I prioritize them based on what I see rewatching these games, what I think is more important. The first one, less CJ Uzama, more Ruckert. Obviously, Robert Saleh alluded to it. We've been screaming it from the top of our lungs all summer long that he should be tight end 2 by now and trajecting to tight end 1 by the end of the season. Obviously, Conklin's having a good year, but Jeremy Ruckert needs to be tight end 2. So that was first on my list. Number 2, and this works in with the Michael Carter thing, more Dalvin Cook on third downs. Michael Carter was being misused as a third down back, and the things that he does well are not third down back qualities. Obviously, pass protection is an issue for him. Catching the ball has been an issue for him this year, so that wasn't it. Dalvin Cook could potentially be that third down back. Obviously, he's not great at pass pro, but I think he gives you a better chance than Carter did. And that allows you to use Izzy Abanikanda as your change of pace back behind Breece Hall. So you have Breece Hall on like your big downs, your 1st and 10s or whatever, and then you can spell Izzy on some of those screens and whatnot, and then keep Dalvin as your third down back. That was my number 2. Number 3, less Allen Lazard. I'm sorry. He's an Aaron Rodgers guy. And like if Aaron Rodgers is not throwing him the ball, he does not look like he belongs on an NFL football field. He's dropping too many passes. He's making lazy mistakes with penalties. So I want to see a little bit more, even if it is Brownlee or Malik Taylor. I think they do it in a different skill position rather than wide receiver. But if you're going an eye for an eye at wide receiver, I'd love to see more Brownlee or Taylor. So those are my 3 additional changes that I think I would do. You can't really do much to the O-line. We don't really have the pieces unless it's Roger Saffold for Xavier Newman, which is okay. It's not like the greatest fix. Roger Saffold has his warts too, but Xavier Newman is very green. So we need to replace him as soon as possible. But other than that, you're not changing play caller. You're not changing quarterback at this point. That last game was the game to change your quarterback. We said it after the game against the Chargers. You want to bench Zach, that's the game, but you know what's going to happen is you give him one last chance. He does just enough to prove that he's the guy and that the other quarterbacks weren't going to do a damn thing against the Raiders anyway. So it's a tough position, but there's still some more fixes that we can do other than cutting our third string running back.
So I have 2 lists, and this is funny because I did not know this was exactly going to be the topic for today's show, but I have a bunch of notes that I wrote down at work today, which I very rarely do for this show. I'm mainly off the cuff when I do this show because we live and breathe this team every day. I've got a pretty good feel on it, but I wrote some things down just to make sure I hit them. And my list here is a 6-part plan entitled Things the Jets Can, and I have can in all caps, change on offense. And so that's not including like changing play callers or changing quarterbacks or injuries to the offensive line, things that are out of their control. These are controllable factors for the New York Jets. And I will say, I agree that making a change at tight end, getting more Jeremy Ruckert snaps is a big one. I'd get Breece Hall more involved on third down, right, and have him in a third down role as well. Getting Izzy involved, those are all great things. But I have 3 big ones. I have Izzy over Dalvin Cook. I have Breece third down passing touches and playing Ruckert over CJ were things 4, 5, and 6. But the 3 major things that if I was king for a day of the New York Jets, this is what I would do. Add motion to the offense. Do you know that the New York Jets last year, guys, had the 5th most snaps with motion in the National Football League? Fifth most. You went from fifth most. I wasn't able to pull the statistics. I spent more time than I care to admit looking for the statistics of how many snaps they had in motion this season. I couldn't find it. I'm assuming it's not top 5. I'm assuming it's not top 10. I'm assuming it's not top 15. I'm assuming it's a bottom half of the league offense in terms of motion. And so you have now completely taken away something that was a core strength of this football team. And I will ask the question out loud to the group here. You drafted this kid with a system in mind. You're going to run the Shanahan McVay system that is so predicated on motion, making things easy for a quarterback. And then 2 years in, you say, hey, buddy, you're going to have to learn an entire new offense. And everyone's kind of surprised that he's struggling. Everybody's kind of surprised that it's not all clicking right away. They've taken away one of their big resources. And so adding motion back into the offense is a choice. They can choose to do that. And if they can't, then Nathaniel Hackett's not up for the job because it is a choice they can make to bring in plays that utilize more motion. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, you need to add more QB design runs. You need to use more read option plays that is forcing a defender to decide, am I going to go after Breece Hall or am I going to stick with Zach Wilson? And if you do more QB draws, more read options, I'm not saying run around like Lamar Jackson and have that be a staple of your offense, but do it just enough to where there needs to be honesty from the defense of this kid can keep the ball and he can run and he can make us pay as well. So that's thing number two. And thing number three is you got to be more aggressive as a play caller. You cannot coach scared in the first quarter. First down passing plays. Second down in short, if you get a big Breece play on first down, can we maybe take a shot on second down to try to pick up a big chunk play? And then on third down, if we have to, run the ball. I cannot tell you how often we see run for 8 yards, run for -2 yards, run for 2 yards, punt. That is the Jets' offensive scheme through the first 3 quarters with Nathaniel Hackett. And then they're down, and it's like, okay, now we'll air it out, and all of a sudden there are chunk plays. So more aggressive play calling. Again, that's a choice. It is a choice to call the plays that they're calling in the fourth quarter that they're successful with early in the game. So you have to do that. You have to add motion. And you have to add more QB design runs. And if you're not going to do those things, just pack it up. If you're not going to willingly make changes that can at least, because at least then I can buy into this idea of they're trying. They're trying to do different things. And I don't think they're doing that right now. So hopefully we see some of those things on Sunday, but that's my list.
Well, I think that's what makes it all so frustrating is that we're seeing a team that could make these subtle changes. I mean, this isn't earth-shattering stuff that's going to take, that would take months to implement, adding motion to the offense. We finally saw this past week, we saw Zach Wilson use his legs more than he has at any point. And every time you see him do that, you just think, why is that not a part of the offense? Why are we not seeing 3 or 4, as you said, Chris, it really, with both things, with Zach running and with throwing the ball down the field, do it enough that a defense has to account for it. Right now, I feel like if you sat Nathaniel Hackett down in a room by himself and asked him to draw you a football field, it would be 20 yards long. Like, that's it. The guy does not see beyond 20 yards. And I said when he was hired, I said, we can't hold this guy accountable. We can't hate on this kid because of what his father did. Well, now he's doing all the same stuff his father did.
He's got his own resume now. He's got his own resume in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not good. And the offenses he's worked with, I tweeted it out the other day, and then Russell Wilson went out, threw a couple more touchdown passes. He already had as many touchdown passes, by week 8 than he had all year last year. And even with Russell Wilson, yes, he has lost his step. He has lost his fastball. You're seeing him having to throw with a lot more touch than he ever did. But he's still playing at a much higher level than he did under Hackett. And as Jets fans, it's absolutely infuriating. John Hepburn says here this is one of the questions I hadn't cooked it in, but really we should talk about it. If and when Dwayne Brown comes back, does he go back to left tackle just out of sheer necessity? Not because you want to move Mekhi Becton again, not because it helps Mekhi at all, but for the sake of the team, do you say, look, Brown's going back to left tackle because him at left and Mekhi on the right is the best thing because you can kick Mitchell inside and he replaces Xavier Newman. Then you've got Tippmann and Tomlinson at center and left guard, respectively. What do you do with these 2 tackles once Brown comes back, Chris?
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself, what is a more easy thing to implement? Asking Dwayne Brown to go to a position he's never played before at 40-plus years old or however old he is, or asking Mekhi Becton to do what, unfortunately, he's done each of the first 3 years of his career, which is get time at both spots, right?
And in college.
Right, like he's just been moved all over the place. What's the easier thing to implement for a team that we've all admitted here tonight doesn't implement things very well? Their installation on offense is poor, right? Like they don't execute things well. So what's going to be the easiest thing to execute? I hate to have to move Mekhi Becton with the way that he's playing this season. But the best course of action for the New York Jets to get a stable offensive line to maybe help with some of the deficiencies they're getting at the quarterback position is I think you have to move Becton over to the right tackle spot. And I think the offensive line that John put out there is probably the best 5 they got. The best 5 are going to play. Those are the best 5. Brown at left tackle, Tomlinson, Tippmann, Mitchell, Becton, and you roll with that 5, and hopefully you can find some consistency. But here we are again, another week, another question of who are the starting 5 offensive linemen going to be for the New York Jets on a given week. Like it's a broken record. We've been doing this for 2 years now because this was a conversation last year. Like we've been having this conversation week in and week out of what I'm getting tired of each broadcast, CBS, Fox, ESPN, putting up the graphic and saying this was the team's starting offensive line. And then they shuffle the deck chairs around and like, this was the group last week. And then they shuffle them again and they're like, this is the group this week. And then they put the statistic on the bottom of the Jets are the only team in the National Football League to not have the same 5 starting offensive linemen play 3 weeks in a row. Whatever stupid statistic they're able to come up with to show how poor the offensive line has been. And so they've got to find some consistency. They've got to find 5 guys that can stay healthy and stay on the field. But here we are, another week where we're having this conversation.
And, I said a few weeks ago that I was tired of people joking that the Jets need to draft 7 offensive linemen, which they don't. But I said I would not oppose 3 at this point, the way things have gone the last couple of years. But, Dylan, the question I wanted to throw at you is we heard today from Garrett Wilson, the team held a players only meeting, which is always awesome because they only have those when things are going really well. It's always the best sign. When I hear players only, I'm like, yes, they must be rolling right along. So players only meeting today, does that worry you a little bit? Or is it just, it is what it is?
At this point, not much more can worry me about the offense. So at least this shows that the team and the young players like Garrett Wilson, he led the meeting. Like they're showing a little bit of accountability. And I felt like you could start to see, and this was a big problem last year, and you were talking about Dwayne Brown. He was a culprit of it too, body language. And Garrett Wilson was starting to display some negative body language on the field this Sunday night. And I felt like it was inevitable that somebody was going to have to sit everybody down and just have a big collective talk. So I'm okay with it. At this point, the bottom can't really fall out much more. We're 30th in multiple rankings. I think if it wasn't for Tommy DeVito, we'd be 31st or 32nd in most of these offensive categories. So you can't really fault them for doing it. Obviously, you don't want to be at this point in the season. I don't know if this was directly related, but Robert Saleh mentioned again about the best coach teams are the teams that coach themselves. And I don't think that you want it to get to this point, but I understand what he's saying about teams needing that leadership from inside the locker room, not the coaches injecting it into the players, but vice versa. So it's kind of tough to see, we're 9 weeks into this, obviously no Aaron Rodgers. And that brings me to my point about motion in a minute. But yeah, it's tough to see 9 weeks in when we were yelling for all these changes to be made for the past month and nothing has been done. The point I wanted to make about motion, Rodgers doesn't like it. So the offense built around Rodgers was very little motion. He didn't need that man zone indicator. However, when he goes down and Zach Wilson needs those man zone indicators, you need to start running motion. Mike LaFleur ran a lot of motion. People were mad at him for it, but when you see the contrast of no motion and what it's doing to your young player who can't decipher things pre-snap at an Aaron Rodgers type level, you need to implement motion. That's going to make it easier for him to understand if it's man so that he can take off and run in a QB run like Chris was talking about. It allows you to be more aggressive if you understand you have man-to-man on the outside with Garrett Wilson, not just a 3-by-1 and you're throwing it to the option in like a little bubble screen because you see the corner playing off coverage. If it's man and you got a post route against too high, then go take that shot. But you really don't find out a lot of that stuff without motion or being in those situations. And Zach Wilson proves that he needs those indicators to help along the way to get him to the right answers, so to speak.
Yeah, that's one thing that I never understand. And I don't like that Robert Saleh used that this week as an excuse. Like, first of all, nobody cares. Like, coach the team. Nobody wants to hear those excuses. And it's like, was there not a plan? Like, did they not at any point after the Aaron Rodgers deal, did they not sit down and say, look, guys, we just acquired a 38-year-old. What's the plan if he gets hurt? Like, here we are. Like, apparently
this was the plan. This was
Apparently they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, the plan was to not
this
know
was
what
the
the hell
plan,
you're
Glenn.
doing
This was the
until
plan.
the plan was to take a look at things in week 9 and say, what should we do now?
Yeah.
Like, so if you say that in week 2 or 3, it's like, well, I kind of don't want to hear it, but I get it. Like, you thought you were going to have Aaron Rodgers and you don't, so now you're making it up as you go along or figuring out. To say in week 9, like, yeah, this, let's be honest, this offense was built for Aaron. Whose offense was Zach Wilson running in training camp? Like, what was he doing?
Right.
And why was there not a plan in place for, we just got a 38-year-old, we better be ready? Hell, no matter what, quarterbacks there's like 7 backups started last week. Like every week, every year, guys get hurt. And there was no plan in place for what happened when Aaron Rodgers got hurt in a league where all we hear about is the importance of attention to detail. And here we are week 9 and the Jets are like, oh, maybe we should start running Aaron's offense this week. I don't get it.
You are that one-dimensional as an offensive play caller and as an offensive mastermind that you can't do anything different. It's week 9, like you said. Like, you're that one-dimensional as a play caller that you can't come up with anything else. Listen, I have a lot of thoughts on Hackett that I want to get to here in a second, but I want to address the players only meeting because I'm going to be that guy. And I'm going to, I was the guy on the show that said the Jets weren't going to make the playoffs when we did our predictions. I'm the negative Nancy in the room, and I'm going to be it again. I think this spells bad news for Robert Saleh because as bad as things got in 2022, it never got to this point where the players are calling a players-only meeting to have conversations about what they're going to do to get out of this mess. To me, this says that the message that Robert Saleh is preaching behind closed doors is starting to fade, and it is starting to wear off. And there are people that are starting to get really, really upset about the way things are going. And I don't know who called the players-only meeting, but this meeting was called because maybe some people in that room felt like things were starting to kind of skid off the road, and they're trying to keep it on the tracks. And so to me, that's my big takeaway. I don't know anybody in that room. I haven't had those conversations. But to me, the alarm is blaring that this is now Robert Saleh. That message is not landing the way that because this didn't happen last year. They benched Zach Wilson twice. This didn't happen. This year, Aaron Rodgers goes down week 9. They're having a players-only meeting. So that's my take on the players-only meeting. When it comes to Hackett, this is the other part of the notes here that I have written down here. And these are 2 questions that are somewhat rhetorical, but I'd like to answer as a group. Question number 1 that I have is, if this team wants to stick with Zach Wilson as the quarterback, why can't they do the things that we listed as a group earlier? Why can't they make a change? And because I have it written down here. They drafted a kid to play in a specific system. He's now not playing that system. And they're all looking at each other like, oh, why is this not working? Why is this kid not playing very well? Well, I don't know. You had him learn a system that was pretty complex for 2 years, and then you benched the kid. You traded for his replacement. You told him he wasn't going to play, and he was going to spend the time learning a brand new system. And now 4 plays in, you say, hey, kid, that new system that you kind of sort of learned, we're through the first semester of school. Yeah, you got to take the final exam right now. Here you go, buddy. Here's the final exam. Oh, you're getting a D minus. Oh, I'm so shocked that you're getting a D minus on the final exam. Like, that's what we're talking about here. Like, it's like somebody taking AP French, and in the first quarter, you're saying, here's the final exam, and they just started the class. Like, I don't know what we expect from Zach at this point. Again, and this is not defending Zach. He's been bad at times this season. But I don't know what the realistic expectations were. And so if it's Zach, then you got to make a change to have somebody that can run this offense, whether it's Tim Boyle or Trevor Siemian. But they don't want to do that. So if you're going to keep Zach, then change the other elements. And if you're not willing to change the other elements, here is the $64,000 question to the room here. And there are a lot of people that don't want to talk about this because they've got dreams and visions of grandeur of Aaron Rodgers coming back and potentially saving the season or what 2024 is going to look like. I will ask this question to you too. Is Nathaniel Hackett going to stay on as the offensive coordinator of this football team after Aaron Rodgers chooses to hang it up? Because then what does the quarterback room look like? Is Nathaniel Hackett going to be a part of the team that picks the new quarterback? Because I don't want any part of that. Are you only keeping Nathaniel Hackett as your offensive coordinator to keep Aaron Rodgers around? Because boy, does that spell disaster long-term if you swing and miss and go 0 in terms of winning a championship. Because what does this look like in 2025 if Nathaniel Hackett is the OC? Does anybody on this call, does anybody listening to this show trust Nathaniel Hackett to be a part of the decision-making process of picking a quarterback with the GM who whiffed it on the 2nd overall pick? If Nathaniel Hackett is gone, I question the process of hiring Nathaniel Hackett in the first place to be your offensive coordinator with Aaron Rodgers. And then you're going to give the decision maker who took Zach Wilson with the 2nd overall pick, and that didn't work out very well, another opportunity to swing at a quarterback. So to me, Nathaniel Hackett still being on this team and being a coach right now gives me more questions than it does answers long-term for the New York Jets. Because again, you're putting all your chips in the middle of 2024 being the year that you win a Super Bowl. And if you don't, what does that look like? Is Nathaniel Hackett just getting kicked out of the door? I don't think so.
I think
Yeah.
the second Aaron Rodgers is gone, Nathaniel Hackett goes with him.
Then that's malpractice. That's Joe Douglas
Right.
that's malpractice from a coaching perspective. It's malpractice.
It's the Jets trying to get a quick fix and win a Super Bowl, and the best way
Trying
to
to
do
take
it, they thought,
advantage
was
of
to
the
get
roster.
Aaron Rodgers, and the best way to get Aaron Rodgers was to hire his best friend.
Yeah. I think it
Was
is
it,
like
was it? Because then he would have been in Denver last year.
Well, that wasn't
maybe
an
he
option
didn't
because
want to be in Denver last year.
There wasn't as much bad blood. Green Bay gave him a huge contract extension. It looked like everything was all rosy. And then once they pissed him off, he was like, you know what? I don't care about the contract. I want to go. And he wanted to go to the place where Hackett was.
I can't get on board with it.
I'll say this as somebody who wanted to keep Mike LaFleur and get rid of Zach Wilson, and if you needed to, Elijah Moore. I don't think Rodgers was probably going to come here without Hackett. So for that exclusive reason, I'm okay with it. But like you said, if he's gone, the second Rodgers is gone, and that's kind of, it's almost the hope of Jets fans at this point. It's like, all right,
that's got to be the plan. You can't have a plan to keep
that's
him
what's
around
really
beyond
shitty
Aaron
about
Rodgers.
What kind of plan is that? That's the worst
really
kind
shitty.
of plan. That's the only team that could try a plan like that is the New York Jets. They're the only
plan-
team that would ever
Johnson.
think about. It's
The
unbelievable.
plan is, what do we have to do to get Aaron Rodgers in here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
now that he's here, once he's gone, all that stuff we had to do to get him here, we're going to undo.
It's brutal.
And
Here we go.
look, and the plan is, if they win the Super Bowl, nobody gives a damn what happened. And
More
that's the
comments
plan.
came in. I wanted to put
The plan
John's
is-
comment up because I think this
Go ahead.
is important. I think you have your potential options for pipeline offensive coordinators in-house, but I think this is one that's not talked about. Ron Middleton, he gets his boys to play, and he will inspire a locker room full of men. I don't know if he would be a very good offensive coordinator to the point of being a play caller, but if you're just looking for somebody to hold down the fort, I think Middleton could do it. But I always felt like under LaFleur that Calabrese was the guy, like the understudy that they wanted to build up. And now at this point, I don't know who that guy is. So it's really tough. You're not going to move on in season, obviously. And if you do move on, you have to go externally to replace him, which means you're probably replacing your whole offensive staff or majority of it.
Yeah,
so
you can't do that in season. That's not.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
So you really can't cut the head off the snake now. And when it does come down to it, you're probably just going to have to rip it down to the studs anyway and just rebuild your offensive staff. It's crazy that we're sitting here talking about the potential of our offensive coordinator being bad when the Bills are a top offense and fired their offensive coordinator just 3 days ago. Like,
that was weird. That was, I mean, I don't want to talk that much about the Bills, but that was just weird. I feel like everything that went wrong in that game had to do with like the players, like fumbles and drop passes.
Yeah.
And you fired. It's almost like they just, you got scapegoated. Let's be honest.
Yeah, for sure. And but it just goes to show that other teams are looking inward at themselves and saying, "Hey, we got to make a change," and they're making drastic changes while we're just cutting Michael Carter, who probably doesn't need to be cut. Really,
but
I
again,
understand.
but I talk. Yeah, I mean, we all know. This is something I talked about the other day. They're kind of stuck. Like, your Boyle is not an NFL quarterback. He's another. He's another Aaron Rodgers guy.
Glenn, can I push back? They're not stuck. They're not stuck. They can
terms of what
fire
they can
Nathaniel
do.
Hackett. They can fire Nathaniel Hackett.
Okay, so then what's the plan next year for quarterback?
But that's
Rodgers retires.
I-
You've got
okay.
Zach Wilson.
I'm sorry, but if you're going to let Aaron Rodgers and what is right now a ruptured Achilles hold your entire organization hostage, then you deserve all of this. They as a franchise deserve
and maybe
this.
they do. And maybe
And they don't
do, but
deserve
that's what
they
they're
don't
doing.
deserve me feeling sorry for them. They don't deserve, to me, this for those who are like, "Oh, it's only been 9 games." Really? Do we really need to litigate this? Do you want to go back and look at the offense? The offense this year for the New York Jets is worse than the offense that Nathaniel Hackett had in Denver. And everybody laughed out loud. I can remember the weekly segments on Get Up on ESPN where they would talk about, man, if only this Denver offense could score like 18 points, they would win every game because of how good their defense is. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Does that sound familiar to exactly the way the New York Jets are going in 2023? You can make a change. Let's call this what this is. Aaron Rodgers is the GM, president of football ops, and owner of this organization right now. And so, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I like Aaron. I like that he's here.
Right.
I'm hopeful for what 2024 can be. And they're never going to come out and say this, but the right answer is to come to the podium and say, this entire season is based on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is not here. Don't watch the games because this isn't going to work. We'll see you in 2024. But they're not going to say that out loud. But that's where we're at. Because if they won't fire Nathaniel Hackett for being a terrible offensive coordinator and not doing any of the things that we've listed here that are easy, if the three of us can sit at home and say, hey, maybe do some more motion, hey, maybe be more aggressive in your play calling, hey, maybe utilize the quarterback who almost scored a touchdown running the football, extended multiple drives with his legs running the football, maybe utilize that guy in that way a little bit more. If they're not willing to do that, then I'm sorry, you don't deserve to be an offensive coordinator in this league just because you're best friends with Aaron Rodgers.
The Jets right now are using roughly 5 roster spots and $30 million on guys who would not be in the NFL if they were not on the Jets.
And the most important
Alan
offensive
Lazard
coach
would be in the NFL, but he's not good. But Randall Cobb would not be in the NFL. Dalvin Cook was a free agent for how long before the Jets finally signed him? Robert Turner is not good enough. Tim Boyle threw 1 touchdown in college. I don't know how that guy snuck into the NFL. I think it's an incredible story, but I don't know if we should laugh at it or make a movie about it. I don't know how you throw 1 college touchdown and you're in the damn NFL.
And
it's
this is why.
But these are all Aaron Rodgers' buddies. These are the guys he wanted. And so now you're taking up 5 roster spots and $30 million in cap space on guys who don't belong.
And this is why Robert Saleh, when asked by Michael Kay about making a quarterback change, pleads the fifth, because he can't give the answer that he wants to give. He can't give the truthful, honest answer, which is this entire thing crumble. It's weird that we're sitting here and this team is still technically mathematically in it. This was over 4 plays in. 4 plays in, everything they built completely crumbled. And guess what? There was no answer, because no matter who you bring in, and I wrote this down too, because I knew people were going to come at me with this at some point. Do you want to know why Josh Dobbs is succeeding in Minnesota? Because Kevin O'Connell is an offensive genius and is crafting plays and is in his headset saying, this is the look that you're going to get. If not, do this, do X, Y, and Z in the middle of a game when he just showed up a couple days ago. Why is CJ Stroud having success in Houston with Bobby Slowick? Because Bobby Slowick is a really good offensive mind and is creating very good schemed up plays for CJ Stroud. Also, CJ Stroud is immensely talented. Where is that with the New York Jets? Is Nathaniel Hackett breaking down plays with Zach Wilson in his headset? Is Nathaniel Hackett Bobby Slowick? He's not. Like there's talks of Bobby Slowick getting head coaching interviews this offseason for the job that he's doing offensively. Ben Johnson is coaching circles around people with the job that he's doing in Detroit, getting Jared Goff to being almost an MVP candidate with the way that he's playing up there. What's Nathaniel Hackett doing? I'm one-dimensional. The West Coast offense, I can't do anything different. This entire thing's built for Aaron Rodgers. That's bullcrap. I'm sorry. That cannot be the case. And if they're not willing to do the thing that could potentially help this, which is get somebody new in there because they're afraid of upsetting Aaron Rodgers' feelings, then guess what? Everything that gets said about them, everything that is discussed with this team and Robert Saleh's job security and Joe Douglas's job security is warranted. It is the criticism that is being leveled against them is deserved if they are willing to go down like this and not make any changes. And they've got a game on Sunday. They have an opportunity to do that. But guys, I'm tired of doing this every week. We could have done the show last week. We're doing it again this week, and we'll probably do it again next week. That's how this is how this goes. Because the thing that they can do in order to potentially change this, they won't pull that ripcord.
No, it doesn't seem like they're going to. And I get it. Like as excited as I am for Aaron Rodgers, I get you don't want to toe the line of potentially making him mad and having him retire, whatever. But at this point, what else do you have to lose? You never really got the chance to see him play for you. So like if he could just retire next year because you fired Nathaniel Hackett and wanted to actually bring in a smart offensive mind, perhaps he might like that system.
You're at 1 second-round pick.
Right.
Not a first.
Right.
You're at a second-round pick, and you just reset.
Exactly. And obviously that would suck. Like that would really suck to see as a fan and be a part of. But if that's the line that you don't want to cross, I don't know. Sometimes the risk is worth it to me because I can't keep watching these concepts that Nathaniel Hackett's running. You go into 2-minute offense and all you run is bench, which is essentially for anybody who might play Madden or has played Madden. You just run 2 corner routes with 2 out routes underneath. Every single 2-minute play is an iteration of bench. I don't care what formation they're in. It's always going to be a 2x2 look, and they'll just run bench, out-breaking routes for Zach Wilson, and he does not do well with them. So it's just so funny that it's just predictable at this point. The runs were predictable in the beginning of the season. Now the pass concepts are becoming predictable. The drop that Alan Lazard had was the exact same concept that they threw the pick on later in the game. So teams are understanding that this is a very basic, stale offense, and you can blame whoever you want at this point. but big changes need to be made if this is going to continue, because you can't just wait for the season to be completely out of playoff contention and then start looking back and trying to figure things out.
That's the thing, and that's what we won't know. We'll wrap up here, but that's what drives me nuts. I was thinking about this today, obviously, because I don't think about anything else because I'm a maniac. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I don't even know who to be mad at. Like, I'm a Joe Douglas guy, but I'm looking at this offseason like, Jesus, this is terrible. But and I said this the other day, would anybody be surprised if we find out later that when all this happened, if we find out Woody Johnson said, Joe, get Aaron Rodgers and give him what he wants and don't ask any questions. And Joe Douglas am I supposed to believe Joe Douglas loved Robert Turner and 38-year-old Randall Cobb and all these guys who are not good and they just happen to be friends with Aaron Rodgers? Is Robert Saleh being forced to play Zach Wilson? Or did Joe Douglas say, you know what? I want to make sure there's no one else in the building other than Aaron to threaten Zach Wilson. So I'm going to get Tim Boyle, and then we're going to add Trevor Siemian to keep on the practice squad, and hopefully somebody poaches him. Like, I don't know who to be mad at because some of the moves are so bad, but we don't know what level they start at. And again, when this whole Aaron Rodgers thing happened, and that's what I'm saying, Chris, I don't feel bad for them. They've made their bed. I've said this a million times. I talked about this on Scott Mason's podcast. We said, even before the trade happened, we said the Jets are approaching this like the entire offseason plan is get Aaron and everything else will be okay. And there was no other, it didn't go any deeper than that. There was no like plan B. What if this doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? I tweeted out months ago that you can't take this team seriously as a Super Bowl contender if your plan is Zach Wilson as QB2 and you don't go get a Gardner Minshew or a viable veteran quarterback who can score you 21 points a game. And so they deserve every ounce of criticism they're getting. I feel bad for people who have talked themselves into the fact that this team is going to make the playoffs because they're not. But it's
that they're even going to beat Buffalo.
They're going to lose on Sunday. What are we doing here?
It's amazing how we've gotten to the Jets are going to beat Buffalo because they lost to Denver on a mistake at the end of the game. I mean, obviously they had plenty of mistakes in the game, but it's the vicious cycle that we're going through. We'll be all the way down in the dumps. No, I feel like everybody on this podcast is predicting a loss for the Jets, rightfully so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, coming off a loss and you're back at home in Buffalo, they're going to play well under their new offensive coordinator. It's probably going to be 10-point loss for the Jets. That's how I'm seeing it.
Let's do that. Let's predict some scores and wrap this thing up.
Gotcha. All right, I'll just stick with mine. I'm going to go 21-10 Jets loss.
23-9 Jets loss. And real quick, Glenn, we should do a show discussing Joe Douglas's draft history because it's getting worse and worse by the day.
17-6 Jets lose. That'll do it for this one, Jets fans. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully my guy Izzy Abanikanda lights it up and my guy Jason Brownlee gets some targets. That's what I want to see, but I don't think we're going to. We got to run, Jets fans. Have a good one.